Hello, everyone. My name is Ming, and today I'm going to be talking to you about my experience with target test prep. So, starting off with my background, I'm 22 years old, and I'm currently a senior at Ohio State. As you can see in the background, go Bucks! And I'm going to be starting a role in the consumer packaged goods industry following graduation. I'm currently working on applications to some deferred MBA programs as well, so that's why I decided to take the GMAT at this point in my life as opposed to later on. I took my first practice test around 4 months ago, and I went in completely blind with no prior preparation. I got a 635 on this test, with my quant score being the big outlier here. My verbal was already really good, and my DI was also pretty good. So clearly, I had to focus on studying quant and trying to improve my abilities in that section as much as possible. And that is by March 18th, which is when I had scheduled to take the actual test. On the second practice test that I took, which was on March 11th, I got a score of 715, with quant still being my lowest score, but clearly it had markedly improved. I then took the actual exam a week later on the 18th, and I got a 755. So, as for my actual study plan and preparation, I started in early January when the current school semester started, and I studied alongside taking my classes. I had no exposure to anything GMAT except for that first practice test that I took at that point. I came across target test prep just by browsing through forums like GMAT Club and looking for the best quant resources out there. TTP was overwhelmingly the most recommended by the vast majority of people, as I'm sure you've seen as well. And I really like that it offered a structured study plan system with all sorts of features that can save your valuable time on finding questions and good learning material. And then you can use that time on focus study instead. So I used TTP for about 2 months, getting in around 180 hours of actual study time for quant and data insights, but I opted to skip on the verbal section of TTP because I had already gotten a good score on my first test, and I was very confident in my abilities on that section. TTP was tremendously useful during my study for many reasons. First of all, TTP structured study plan saved me a lot of time by providing all of the material that I needed in one place. It had features like an error log and a time tracker that helped me to stay focused, and it allowed me to easily review questions I had missed. Additionally, I hadn't taken a standardized test like this since the ACT way back in high school, junior year. That was like over 4 years ago. And it would have taken me a long time to, get over that first initial period where, you're all confused and you have to get your bearings straight and know what to do. So TTP takes out all of those things out of the equation, allowing you to just focus on practicing and understanding the material that it provides for you. Secondly, TTP doesn't just teach you the material, but also how to think about these questions. Sure, you can try to memorize every formula or type of question that you'll see on the test and answer accordingly, but I've found that it is much more helpful to truly understand intuitively what the question is asking and why the formulas work. So, for example, one of my econ professors, he says that econ isn't something that you can understand with just regular intuition. You have to develop a new intuition based on things that you haven't learned before. I found that doing this would not only prepare me for the GMAT, but also really strengthen my reasoning capabilities outside of test taking. And I could use this reasoning, of course, in any context outside of the test. I think what really made the difference in my preparation were the chapter tests. While the only completely accurate practice problems that you'll be able to find are original questions written by GMAC themselves, the TTP does an excellent job at imitating the same style and feel. There are over 1,000 questions that they've prepared meticulously to help you truly understand each section, split into easy, medium, and hard tests. After each chapter, you are faced with tens or hundreds of targeted questions related to the concepts that you had just learned, and they're styled in a way that is extremely reminiscent of the actual GMAT. So TTP, of course, really puts tons of time into making sure that their content covered every single inch of what could possibly be tested on the actual test itself. As for my journey, it lasted just a little bit over 2 months, starting on January 7th and ending on March 18th. I selected a target score of 685 plus, which was the hardest difficulty setting that there was. And I had already set my test date on March 18th since I wanted to apply to deferred programs, and that would leave some time to prepare the rest of the application. And so, because it was March, I had the test set on March 18th. I knew I only had a little bit over 2 months to study. So I knew that I had to get every mission done every couple of days or so. So that's how each section, like each concept is split up. It's in different missions, and you do the lessons and you take the chapter test afterwards. And so I did try to get one mission done every couple of days or so. And I went to my classes every day, did TTP when I could fit it in, whether it be during like an hour in between classes or in the evening after I've done all my classes. And I believe that I averaged about 2.5 hours of studying per day, since I had to balance studying with other things in my life, extracurriculars and all that. And I also didn't want to experience burnout. So that's really important because burnout can be really devastating to people who are preparing for a big test like this. I would do all the lessons in each chapter, then complete the chapter test at the end without fail. I didn't skip anything. I stuck with the plan that TTP had set out for me, and that worked wonders. So one change that I did make was that I removed verbal from my study plan, since, like I said previously, I was already very confident in my verbal abilities, and I felt that the time could be better used on studying quant. By the time that March came around, I was nearly completely done with the quant section, and I was able to move on to data insights, and I was able to complete data insights over the course of like 4 or 5 days, going through the same process of learning that material and then getting some intensive practice afterwards. I will say that I do tend to experience moderate to high test anxiety. So after I took my second practice test, I decided to take it easy and really only review questions that I missed or top topics that I performed worse in. Going into my actual test on March 18th, I had completed the quant and data insight sections. So now that I've talked about my experience with TTP, I want to give some general advice on taking the GMAT focus. I think that the number one most important thing is to truly understand intuitively why numbers work the way they do. So don't just take formulas or identities for granted. Try to really understand why they work. Secondly, I think it is extremely important to not overstress. As someone who experiences test anxiety myself, I know really how detrimental it can be to see a difficult question and then you start to panic and then it all goes downhill from there. This is very bad. Uses up precious time on the actual test, so you want to avoid it at all costs. Try to relax. Don't stress yourself out too much, especially during that last week. I myself was so nervous for the actual test that despite setting up 9 hours of sleep the day prior to my test, I was tossing and turning for at least several hours. Make sure to get good rest and eat a healthy breakfast the day of your test. That will really work wonders for how well you perform. And finally, be confident and proud of the work that you've put in into doing well on this test, and go into that test knowing that you're going to do good. Overall, I would say that TTP is really the only prep that you need to do well on the GMAT. It's the only resource that I use personally, and I purchased the 4 official practice tests, but I only took the 2 free ones that they give you, and I didn't do any additional practice problems from MBA.com, even though I bought them. This course truly provides you with everything you need to get a really high score, and you just need to use it wisely and really take in everything they have to offer. Thanks for listening, guys.